When I'm beginning to look at a head of hair to start a new lock journey, or even just in consultation mode when talking to my clients, we go over a lot of key points because a square grid or a geometrical grid isn't necessarily the best thing for every hair type. In fact, it's really only good for a couple of hair types when you're talking about the health of the base of the lock. See, because our hair follicles grow in a certain manner. When we have straight and into the wavy hair types, they're growing more like perpendicular to the head shape, right? Is that perpendicular? And when we're getting into our curly hair types, the follicles tip a little bit, and so they kind of push. And so if you square grid out a head that has curly hair and one hair follicle is going this way and one's going that way, and you've got a group of them going different ways, and then you square grid that out, a little bit into a journey, that base is going to start to split and continuously have splits, or sometimes they'll start to shift and the corner will move off and do other stuff, and you won't have square grids and you'll be fighting it the whole journey. This is something that can totally be avoided by just talking about the natural partings of the head and the way that the hair grows. There's so many different variants, but let's take one specific thing, like a person that's had fine hair their whole life and is really trying to get that full, beautiful style out of the dreadlocks. Well, first of all, we need to warn them that when they leave the chair, it's not going to look like that, because you're paying us a whole lot of money and you're going to kind of walk out with really tight tendrils and you're going to see your scalp somewhat. If you square grid that person's hair out, they're going to see their scalp no matter what. Like, even when they're done and they have the full hair again, they're going to see their scalp. And so a square grid definitely isn't the best for that client unless it needs to be on their head. But even that, you can still create a more geometrical shape than a square grid and create a better lay for them if you round out some of the parts and give some half moons geometrically through the head. This is going to create a lay that all the dreads are going to lay over each other, and they're not going to see their scalp the same way that they would if you square gridded out their head when they leave, let alone when they start to get that fullness and that fuzziness again, because that's when it really comes into play. To further the conversation about what the client wants, this is what our job is to interpret what the client's saying and create art out of it in a hair fashion, right? And so we're also knowing what they want to see on their head, and that usually is a couple of years from when we do the install, that we're thinking ahead to that. And so these are really good key points to go over with your clients, that when they leave here, it might not be exactly what it is that they're looking for, but it is going to grow into that because we've fashioned it to do so. So when I'm going over this with a client, there's millions of factors that I take into key play. Most of all, it's the hair structure, the hair type, and the hair growth patterns. If they're really strong, we might talk about not square gridding your head out. In fact, I rarely square grid a head out. If they're really curly and really coiled hair, you can easily square grid that out because every single follicle is growing in a different way. And so it's not the same thing as a curly hair pattern where you get a grip of hair growing in one manner and another grip growing in another manner on a curly head scalp. And so there are many different factors that go into this, the way that I would grid out a head, but most of it has to do with what my client wants. I hope this kind of helps when you're looking at this kind of stuff and thinking about starting your lock journey. Happy locking.